How is that going to do versus Perplexed?
Yeah, and the other side is going to be starting off our series and starting off our weekend, of course, with both of these teams going after a dungeon that they've been very familiar with. We have to deal, of course, with some of the explosive, as we mentioned before. But let's see what they have in store for us as the first series of the day is ready to go between Perplexed and Ambition in the other side.
All right, well, let's take a look at the comps that they're running. Looks like very similar to what they've been running in the time trials for this dungeon. So we see the Rogue, the Frost Mage, and also the Windwalker here on top of the Holy Pellet, plus that Vengeance Demon Hunter as well. Both of them also going to that right side, which is interesting because a lot of the teams chose to go to the left side first in the cups. So changes here in the routes for both of the teams.
Yeah, it changes for sure. I mean, the right side is we only saw one team going for this right side strat. I think it was a team game, right? So yeah, already changing the routing up right away. And I wonder if they're going to take the buff and go back towards the Ardenwood area, or if they're just going to go for the card go first. But man, got to keep in mind this is 20 fortified. Our lowest key level is at 20, but 20 is still pretty formidable. However, both of these teams have been practicing a ton ever since we announced the affixes. They've had 2 weeks to prepare once they learned the affixes. So I would assume that across the board from both teams, or pretty much all 8 of our teams, that we're going to see a lot more refined gameplay, especially considering, you know, all these teams had to qualify to get here. They're all incredibly strong teams in this bracket. It's one of the most stacked brackets we've ever had. So I'm expecting mostly clean gameplay, but check out the difference. That was technically a clean pull for both teams, but it just went so much faster for Ambition. They finished that pull about 15-20 seconds faster than Perplexed already.
Yeah, took a look at the cooldowns they committed here to figure out why the difference was there, and it looks like Ashine did not commit his cooldowns while JPC did, so that might have been what made up the difference. I wonder why Ashine was holding on to his cooldowns. Possibly because I feel like there's not gonna be enough time until they reach the boss. It looks like they're doing an insane pull on Perplexed side, where they're pulling literally the whole hallway together on top of this urn, and they're committing most of their offensives here and defensives to be able to survive this pull, as all of these explosives are spawning as well all over the room. They did do a really good job at gathering up everything on both sides. Both Perplexed and Ambition have it really well gathered up. That is so crucial for these kind of pulls because there's so many casters in this as well. And if you don't gather it quickly, it's going to take you so much longer to finish off. Ambition already done though, as they're moving onto a car. They do have barely any offensives available at the moment, but they're going to be coming up in a second, and I would assume they're committing their Bloodlust as soon as the cooldowns come up.
Yeah, for sure they'll have the Bloodlust. I don't believe they have the Ashen available, right? The Ashen was used to make that hallway pull as clean as possible, so no Ashen needed. Remember, it is fortified, not tyrannical, so the boss should be able to be bursted down once they do have the cooldowns available. And also, you have the advantage of the delayed Bloodlust, right? I imagine they'll pop that Bloodlust, yes, right as the first barrier comes out here, and then they'll be able to burst the boss down probably before the second barrier even goes off. That would be ideal. But man, Ambition is really playing well at the beginning of this dungeon, just going pretty much insanely faster than Perplexed. And we haven't really talked too much about Perplexed other than talking about how in the past they've always been kind of that foil to Echo. They've always been the team that's really been at on the cutting edge of progression with Echo, but they were never quite able to take finals series off of Echo. As far as teams go, Perplexed is one of the teams in this tournament that really put a ton of time into their practice schedule, right? A lot of teams didn't really put too much time into their practice until they got affixes 2 weeks ago. Perplexed, however, was in there similar to Aster Y, practicing a lot before they even got the affix combinations, so I'm expecting a lot of big things out of them. But so far, Ambition just playing better.
Yeah, definitely. And even though Perplexed did manage to pop their Bloodlust as soon as they engaged the boss, because Ashine has been holding his cooldowns for this whole time until they reach the boss, they didn't manage to catch up to Ambition, as Ambition is already moving back into that middle circle to get some more of their trash done. So now the cooldowns between those teams are going to be disaligned. So that means that sometimes Ambition is going to be killing a trash bag a bit quicker, and then Perplexed is going to kill one a bit quicker on their side. But you can totally see that the first wing of this dungeon has been done quite a bit more efficient on the Ambition side. And that is something that I talked about Perplexed before we went into this dungeon here. I said that Perplexed is really good at coming up with efficient strategies. They're known for that in the past. They've been one of the most efficient teams before. But looking at Ambition, they are just completely showing us that they can do it even better than Perplexed. This is really, really incredible, as they're now doing some sort of skip, it looks like. They're trying to skip those warlords. not sure if something went wrong or if they have a bad... Oh, they're waiting for the Raptors. They're probably going to pull them into the next pack. Okay, that was definitely bad timing for them. They're wasting quite a lot of time here because of that Enraged Spirit that was patrolling into those Raptors.
Huh. So the 20 seconds advantage that they gained on the first boss doesn't really seem to matter because they have to wait for the patrol timing anyways. Interesting. So there might have been a reason for Ashine to save his cooldowns there because they know they have that. I mean, with all the practice that they've been doing, I'm sure they might have just known that they have that extra window of opportunity where they don't really need to go much faster.
Sagadon.
They pulled Sagadon. Oh no, Perplexed. Oh, that's gonna be a full wipe. You can't live this. Bryson died? Yep, yeah, this is a full wipe from Perplexed. Wow. That's just the one thing that can't go wrong with that pull. Sagadon is right there in that corner. And if you pull him, it's gonna be a wipe. And that's really unfortunate to see. Ambition also going for the same pull, haven't pulled Sagadon. That Dental Drill is still alive. They're gonna have to kill it off before the second Haywire cast finishes, and they're definitely able to get that off nice and clean. But man, that's just heartbreak for Perplexed.
Yep, and you can see how much it's slowing them down now. They have to go back, pull those Raptors again with the Bone Soldier and the Dental Drill, and they have to go quite a bit slower now. Ambition, though, on the other hand, having no issues whatsoever, doing the exact same pull. Of course, they pulled it a bit later, or they had to wait around, basically. Maybe their strategy was to distract the Enraged Spirit. Maybe they were supposed to be like quite a bit, just like a couple of seconds quicker. So JPC maybe managed to distract the Enraged Spirit before the pull, but they weren't quick enough, so it didn't work out. I'm not sure what happened. Either way, those seconds that they lost waiting for the patrol is nothing in comparison to the time that Perplexed lost from that Sagadon pull there. Ambition skipping quite a lot of trash on their side, going all the way to the boss already. Nerf using, actually it was JPC I think, they all used Shadow Melt here, and they also used the Shroud to get past that trash. Alismir, of course, not being able to be a Night Elf, just managed to not get in combat, maybe even use an Invisibility Potion to go all the way.
I think everyone but Nerf used their Shadow Meld, and I'm wondering if... Yeah, okay, they do have the oils coming. You saw Nerf just got pulled right at the last second there. That meant the Sentient Oils were pulled. He was the only one that didn't end up using his Shadow Meld there because they are trying to snap these Sentient Oils into the boss. And now that they're all here, we're going to see the JPC Prio champ coming out with the priority damage, doing a bunch of boss damage after spamming out those Shuriken Storms. And, I mean, that's just one of the strategies that we've seen. We saw teams trying to perfect this in the last Stand tournament after seeing Aster Y pull this off very easily in their Chinese Cup earlier this season. And this is one of those things that we saw teams have issues setting up with in the last Stand tournament, but after 2 weeks of practice, this should be in every single team's repertoire in this dungeon, or you're just going to lose out on a bunch of boss damage here.
Yeah, definitely. Getting those Sentinels onto the boss is just so much extra efficiency because a lot of bosses in the other side don't really allow you to pull anything on top. So if you can do something like this and get extra trash, it's just so good for these teams. And it looks like Perplexed is doing the same thing as well on their side. Of course, quite a bit later because they just reached the boss. Ambition already finishing off Maleficent here. You can also see that JPC did proc the cheat death. So no more chances there if there's going to be another lethal damage happening onto the rogue here, so they need to be a bit careful on JPC. But otherwise, they're doing a really good job. Back to Millhouse now at this point. It is 45 and it is at plus 20, so the lowest key that we have in this global final. So the bosses should not be too big of a problem for those teams.
Yeah, it's just a question of making the bosses as efficient as possible, right? In any scenario in a fortified dungeon where you can pull trash on top of a boss, that's just great efficiency because you'll be dealing with the difficult trash while also cleaving down this kind of big target dummy that a boss ends up being on Fortified, right? Because on Fortified, the bosses aren't as lethal as they normally could be on Tyrannical, so you're not too worried about the mechanics, you're just worried about getting them down as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, definitely. Now Ambition already back on their way to that middle area. They still have the Arden Wield Wing left to do on their side. Looks like they're going to be skipping those Enraged Spirits. That is basically the strat that all of those teams are doing. Nerf is pulling it to the side. He's going to be using Shadow Melt to de-aggro while the rest of the team walked past. And look how fast that was. They basically lost no time time at all because Nerf was the first person there, and then he just had to wait for the rest of the people to get there before he pulled. That was really, really fast and efficient, as they're now doing another pull with one of those DAF speakers before they go into the Ardenweald area where they're gonna get the rest of the trash that they still need to get the 100%. And this pull, again, just absolutely melting for them. Looks like they're going to leave Oros up in the corner. That's something that is pretty standard with this seasonal affix, that they basically... Oh, someone did actually pull Oros. I would assume that was a mistake. Yeah, it looks like Asuna pulled it, but used Shadowmeld to de-aggro.
Yeah.
So thankfully they did manage to get rid of that aggro there.
Wow. I hope they don't need that for something else later on down the line. That's a little unfortunate to have to use your Shadow Meld on that, but I mean, better than dying and having a wipe there, I guess. Especially when you're this far ahead. I mean, look at the timers at the bottom here. That Millhouse Mana Storm split was a minute slower for Perplexed after being 20 seconds slower in the first wing on top of the death timers. Perplexed is close to 2 minutes behind Ambition here. Now, they are coming across what is probably going to be the most difficult section of the dungeon and probably the most difficult pull right now on Fortified. But with 2 damage buffs and all of your cooldowns available, this should be pretty easy. The only thing they're missing out on is the Ashen Hollow, so as long as Nerf is able to stay alive with that Metamorphosis, this pull should just completely melt for them.
Yeah, I saw a very interesting thing on Perplexed side, though. It looks like they were skipping that pull that Ambition just did with that Deaf Speaker. There might be a way where they can make up quite a bit of time if they're pulling that trash with the boss at the very end, instead of doing one extra trash pull, because they're now already in the Ardenweald area. Of course, they're still behind in comparison to Ambition because they lost that much time on that wipe earlier, but that might be a very efficient thing to do, efficient route that maybe even other teams are going to adapt to if they manage. If that actually is what Perplexed is going to do, we'll see later on once they're out of this wing. But yeah, Ambition already moving on to that second pull in the Ardenweald area. It looks like they're going to be activating that urn here because they pulled a lot of trash. Ellesmere, unfortunately, having a little bit of aggro and actually going down. Nerf dropping really low. They managed to survive. They have to use an engineering rest to get Ellesmere back up. Nerf is looking like he's fine, though, as the stun already came out by that urn. That's very well timed by, I think it was Asuna that clicked that urn, obviously being the only Night Fae in that group. But yeah, that was really well recovered by them. Having the healer go down here could have been a disaster.
Did he pull aggro from the lay on hands? Is that because he used the lay on hands there? That's what I'd have to assume happened there. I remember that exact same thing kept happening to Ambition throughout all of last Stand tournament, where they would come to this section of this Ardenweald section of the dungeon first, and their biggest problem was that at the start of some pulls, Ellesmere would just die instantly, and it's interesting to see that still hasn't been figured out after however many weeks of practice. That's just kind of a hard thing to deal with, is healer aggro sometimes on these bigger pulls when your tank is trying to gather everything up together. That's given Perplexed a little bit of a window to come back here, and they'll be able to have a lot more efficient damage here as well. Important to mention, Ambition did not commit their Ashen Hollow to this pull, whereas Perplexed ended up using it here. I imagine if Ambition might have wanted to use it here, but after Ellesmere died and came back up, it might not have been efficient to use it there. But that's going to let Perplexed get a little bit closer back in, with Ambition not having as efficient usages of that Ashen Hollow.
Yeah, very possible. Nerf also proccing that cheap death on that Vengeance Demon Hunter. They do have their Bloodlust back up now, so they're probably going to commit it here for Cyaxa, because I would assume that all of this trash they're gathering up right now is going to be pulled on top of that boss. They do have Raging and Explosive though, so they have to be very careful, because that boss already does a lot of damage on the group by itself, and if you additionally have to possibly have explosives go off and also have all of these mobs in raging as well at the same time, it can be incredibly dangerous. This is a pull that we've seen many teams wipe to over and over, and Ellesmere having the Ashen available for this is actually going to be quite a bit safer for Ambition, while Perplexed, they don't have that Ashen, so it's going to be quite a bit riskier if the trash just doesn't go down quick enough, and they don't have that extra healing from the Ashen either.
Yeah, and I mean, in this situation, you're not going to be trying to milk as much boss damage as possible, right? You're just going to be trying to kill as much of this trash as possible as quickly as possible compared to what we saw in the past from most teams. there's some really nasty combos that can happen on this boss where if you still have trash up and they're still spawning explosive orbs, you can spawn explosives while you're all jumping into the air to deal with the explosive contravents cast. So they're going to be trying to deal with this trash as quickly as possible. And yeah, getting it all dead just like that for Ambition is going to help them out with safety in the long run. Easily gotten through by Ambition with the use of that Ashen Hollow. Perplexed doesn't have the Ashen Hollow though, so let's see how this pull ends up going for them. They're going to have to just destroy this trash without the Ashen, and yeah, that's what they're going for. Just lots of spin to win procs coming out for Swag on the Windwalker Monk there.
Yeah, it was a bit unfortunate that Swag had that bomb on him, so he had to go up to make sure the group doesn't die, but still just doing so much damage. And Wolf Disco as well on that Frost Mage, just doing insane amounts of damage. Ryzen dropping incredibly low, though, on that debuff. Had to bubble to be able to survive here. So there's going to be a little bit of an Ashen Hollow difference now. Ambition, still 3-minute cooldown as they're going back to that middle area. They're going to get ready to pull the boss now. There's no more trash they have to do except the last 8% that they're going to be pulling with the boss once they come back from the intermission phase. Perplexed, on the other hand, you can see they have 85% trash, so they're going to have to do 2 trash pulls. They might be doing both of them with the boss, but that means that they have an increased risk on their side. This is also probably because why they have a different Ashen timing. They might have saved their Ashen for that boss pull that they're going to be doing in just a second with the trash. They're dropping incredibly low though at the end of this Cyaxa pull, and I'm not sure if they can recover. There's 3% left on the boss, and he's dropping incredibly slowly at this point.
Well, Dealer's Exit goes down for Perplexed, but Ambition have already made that long trek back to Mwizala and have already gotten through that first phase, just about to go into this first intermission here. This is a make-or-break point of the dungeon for Ambition. If they aren't able to deal with all 4 of these adds in one intermission phase, that opens up the door completely for Perplexed to get back into it, because that's like about a minute and a half time loss. You have to go through an entire extra boss and intermission phase, so all eyes right now are on Ambition here as they go into this intermission phase. Can they deal with all 4 of these adds at once? If they do, they will all have but just completely locked up this first game. That's all they need to do to win this first game.
Yeah, one quick look at the MDI companion as well, where you can check all of the powers and the gear that they're running. It looks like they had a different idea as well in what kind of powers they're choosing to run with as well. It looks like both of the teams are choosing to run with the bolstering anima power, but Ambition is going with the Champions brand, while Perplexed is actually choosing to go with the necrotic wounding dagger. So a very interesting difference here between the two teams, as Perplexed is dealing with the trash pack that they left out before, but they're not pulling the boss or anything on top of this, so no time gain there whatsoever. So not something that, not what I was talking about earlier. They could have made up some time if they pulled the boss with the trash, but it looks like that's too risky as they just pulled the boss afterwards. Ambition though, they're already in that intermission phase. The one thing that could slow them down at this point is if somebody does not manage to finish off their image. But it looks like at least one C and JPC managed to finish it off, and it also looks like the tank and the healer did. So as long as Asuna also finished that Visage, we can look at the buffs in the debuffs rather. If it goes up to 4, then they have all of those buffs. Looks like it went up to 3. They're missing one more. There we go. They got all of those extra haste buffs, and Musella is just melting as they're also trying to finish off that trash at the same time.
And look at the Ashen timer. The Ashen Hollow perfectly comes off cooldown here in conjunction with the wings, letting Ellesmere completely blast this trash pack down. Wizala has already gone down for Team Ambition, and with these last 2 trash mobs remaining to be finished off, Ambition is giving us a sub 18 minute other side to start off the tournament and take the first game here against Perplexed.
You know the regular dungeon timer for DOS is like 40 minutes or something along those lines. Ambition just tearing through their very first dungeon on this one. Tettles taking that victory, and Perplexed just not able to come back from that early wipe.
That wipe was
Near
catastrophic.
wipe, yeah.
And Ambition looked so good, even just completely off the rip. I think that everybody thought that Perplexed was going to take a quick 2-0 over Ambition. Perplexed is just like this very storied MDI team. Ambition had almost a flawless run, just like a random death from Ellesmere in the Ardenweald area, and they looked great. I wonder if they're going to be able to continue to bring that moving forward into the series. That 18-minute run in DOS is very fast.
It really is, and it kind of goes to show just the level of preparedness that we've been looking for and expecting as well, because we talk about how important it is for teams to sort of, metagame where they might win or where they might lose here in Nagura, to be able to better optimize what they need to be practicing for. But for all of these teams, they pretty much have to be going across the board on everything. And there it is, Sagadon.
Man.
Sagadon, of course, taking his revenge upon the Perplexed team there.
Oh no! I also don't know exactly what happened there with that Sagadon pool. It must be heartbreaking for them. Of course, they still have a chance of winning since this is a best of 3. But yeah, definitely you can see how close the competition is. Right, one mistake, and it looked like it didn't even cost them that much time either, right? Because they immediately saw they pulled, they full team wiped, they went back, and it really, cost them a minute maybe, which of course is a long time in like an MDI scenario, but you can see just how close this competition is. Like you can't make a single mistake, otherwise you're not going to be winning against those teams in this global final here.
So just
let's
some quick
actually
stats.
start focusing on that real quick, Tettles, because we do have what exactly happened there with Sagadon.
Yes, we do have that Sagadon wipe, but it was just an unfortunate backpedal. But Ambition started off the dungeon in the lead. They got this pack grouped up on top of this urn lot better than where Perplexed did, and it allowed them to have like a 20-second lead coming out of the Hakaar wing. And this was something that it just allowed Ambition to save a lot of time, making sure their mobs got grouped up. They unfortunately kind of threw all of that time away, standing here having to wait for this patrol from this enraged spirit. Nerf was kiting these warlords around for 20 seconds while they needed to get all of those bone soldiers and stuff. But it's just an unfortunate body pull from Perplexed here. They end up pulling Sagadon straight into this trash pack, and that was kind of the end of it because of how just fast Ambition was playing. And Ambition was continuing to improve on their strategy. They were snapping these sentient oils into the boss. And this is a strategy that we saw first by Aster Y, and then a lot of the teams, basically every team, has adopted this strategy since, and they are also now snapping these sentient oils into this boss. And you're going to see this a lot come DOS in future weeks. Ambition only has basically one mistake in this whole entire run, and it's Ellesmere accidentally getting sniped by an explosive here while these mobs are getting grouped. But this is honestly fine. The urn is going to be coming out. You do see Azuna there opening up that urn. All of these mobs are stunned. Ellesmere gets engineering rezzed, and this pack is kind of fine. There may be just a little bit of time lost in dealing with this. And then from here on out, Ambition is playing like a very interesting strategy with how they are dodging Oros Goldheart, how they're dodging this Enraged Spirit. And they were able to improve multiple minutes off of their time trial time in this the other side. So for some like context, Perplexed had the fastest time trial time in this dungeon before Cup A was played at 19:25, and Ambition finished this dungeon at 17:57. And so whether or not Perplexed had that wipe or not, Ambition was going to be very close on their heels, if not already beating them. And so Ambition here has definitely shown up to play. And it's like we saw in that video before this, they are playing to win, and they are showing it right here.
No question there, as they do take that victory. As, Ambition, we never really knew where they'd fit with regards to a lot of the other teams, because there is so much talent going on in these brackets, and we're always kind of looking at, okay, and Perplexed has been fighting up against Echo for, the dawn of time, basically at this point, Zyro, so they probably would be favored going into it. And Ambition, the biggest thing we talk about every single MDI is how well can these teams capitalize on any mistake, but even if there wasn't a mistake, Ambition was still just pounding the pavement.
Yeah, they were still ahead. And I mean, a lot of that can be attributed to whether or not Windwalker procs can kind of RNG out some big AoE pulls. It can also be attributed to DPS cooldown allocations, but yeah, it felt like none of that mattered, right? It seemed like Ambition was just playing better throughout the entire dungeon. I mean, I don't know about you guys. This already kind of throws a wrench in my pick'em, so I'm kind of fingers crossed here a little bit. But I mean, this Halls of Atonement can be incredibly dangerous. This is nasty. Like 22 fortified Halls of Atonement, not to mention Grievous and Spiteful, makes some of these massive pulls that we see teams going for just ridiculously dangerous. I mean, these teams have been talking about how big the pulls they're going for in practice have been in this dungeon. I think JPC even tweeted "Pray for us" on Halls today, so I'm interested to see what they're pulling out. Could we see the triple shard pulls that people have been talking about, but we've never seen in competition? I'm really excited for this.
Yeah, and Halls of Atonement is probably one of my favorite dungeons to look at for an MDI environment as well, Nagura, because there is so much diversity that you do have access to, really. You have a lot of freedom, and this is one thing we saw since beta was, hey, you got a lot of freedom into what you can pull with these different shards.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen insanely huge pulls in this dungeon, and we've also seen quite a bit of variety in comps as well, what the teams have been running here in Halls of Atonement. In some other dungeons, maybe not so much, but in Halls, we've seen Elemental Shamans, we've seen Warlocks, we've seen a bunch of different things. JBC is saying, say a prayer for our Halls of Atonement. That's something that I wanted to speak about as well, because I do think this dungeon generally is very dangerous for melee. When you do MDI style pulls, because some of these mobs have frontals, and when there's 20 mobs on top of each other, it's really hard to see where the frontals are going. And then on top of that, you also have Spiteful now. So now all of a sudden you have to worry about frontals, and you also have to worry about ghosts with very long arms hitting you as a melee player. So I wonder what kind of comps they're running. Maybe they're choosing to go with that double range instead of double melee comp for this? We'll see.
Yeah, we've seen a number of times where we've had those sort of synergistic comps where it's playing off of melee or playing off of range. You know, in Halls in particular, we've been able to see those Warlocks start coming in as well, Zyro. So there's been some emphasis as well on how well can some of these teams have some good diversity. Hey, there we go. We'd love to see it. Perplexed is down 1 right now as Halls of Atonement gets started and Ambition looks to further their lead.
I love how in that hype trailer we have Shelly popping up to the 200k DPS, and even though Shelly isn't here in the competition, the fact that he's throwing, we're seeing the Desterlock picks coming out just because he showed how strong it was here in this dungeon. This is going to be sick to see. Perplexed going for that normal double shard pull, where you go down to the bottom left, pull double shard, go crazy with the Warlock cooldowns, and again, check it out, Ashine doing 200k DPS off the start, even going beyond at the 250k.
They have 3 shards!
Well, Ambition is going for the triple shard.
3 shards. Okay, there's 3 shards in this pull. They pulled both of them on the left side when you go in, and 1 on the right side. This is an absolutely insane pull. I don't even know how much percentage there's going to be once this is going down, but there's so much things going on at the same time that you have to watch out for.
300K.
You see all of these curses going out, and look at the amount of damage once he's doing, and that Dastro look absolutely crazy. And this is why they're running this Guardian Druid, because Guardian Druid can do these huge pulls because of that strength of the Incarnation with the legendary combination. Wow, absolutely crazy how they're pulling this off.
Check out the control there as well. The control there as well. They all back up into that far back corner so that they don't have to worry about the Spiteful Shades running towards their ranged at all. They keep it locked down with the slows from the Frost Mage. And even though there's a little bit of double thrash damage coming out from the 2 shards that are still alive, they're totally safe. Don't have to worry about the Spitefuls finishing them off. That 1 trash pull got them to 55% trash, and all they need to do is deal with this just 1 mob off in the corner here, get their buff, and move on to the rest of the dungeon while they wait for their cooldowns to come back up. That was a perfect pull from Ambition, and that's something that I think I remember talking to Incarnation about this. They were one of the teams that was trying to set up that triple shard pull, and they were convinced that the only way that you could make that pull work was with a Balanced Druid or something with equally strong cooldowns. But they couldn't make the Balanced Druid work for the rest of the dungeon, and I think we have our answer here. It's the Destruction Warlock. They just do so much damage with Reign of Chaos and Infernal. That was ridiculous.
And it really makes sense. Their composition just makes so much sense. They have that Guardian Druid with a 3-minute cooldown on that strong Incarnation, allowing them to do insane pulls, plus the Infernal as well, just pairing up that huge damage whenever the Guardian is able to do this really big pull. So crazy to see. But look at Perplexed. They are already done. They're 59% trash. So even though it looked absolutely crazy what Ambition was doing, and it was crazy, Perplexed is faster. This is one of those things where when you look at it, you think it's more efficient, but it wasn't. Maybe because that pull was so big, it ended up just not making up as much time. Maybe it was the time that they needed to gather it up. I don't know, but something made it not as efficient. And in the end, it was still 2 trash pulls, right? Both of the teams had 2 total trash pulls. Of course, Ambition had a bigger first pull, but a smaller second pull, where Perplexed had kind of 2 equal pulls, and it ended up being faster for Perplexed. But they're still really close together, as now both of them are on Halkias, and they're just pulled a lot of trash on top of this boss. They have to be very careful here with all of these Houndmasters casting the the volleys onto the group, and then they also have all of these spiteful shades they have to deal with at the same time, and all of the casts that are going off. You can see Nerf dropping really low as his Incarn just now came back up. He should be saved now with the Incarnation running. Divine Field on the other side also not having any more cheap deaths available, so they have to be careful. But this is very interesting because both of these teams are running completely different comps. Perplexed running triple range as well with that Shadow Priest, while Ambition is running a Rogue instead of a third range.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons this first section of the dungeon has gone faster for Perplexed is because having the Shadow Priest with a power infusion available to the Destruction Warlock just kind of feeds into that engine more and more and more. The Reign of Chaos Infernal combination is a big feedback loop. Essentially, for those of you at home who don't know how Destruction Warlock works with this build, play a talent called Reign of Chaos. Every single soul shard you use on abilities gives you a 15% chance to spawn another Infernal for 10 seconds, which gives you more soul shards, which lets you spawn more Infernals, essentially. And having more haste to cast more Rain of Fires to use more soul shards just feeds back into that loop more and more and more. And you can have RNG bad pulls where you cast a couple of Rain of Fires and you don't get Infernal procs, and you're kind of sitting there with your, hands in the air like, well, I guess this is just a bad pull, guys. BG go next. And that could have happened for Ambition there, even though Onesie did 300k DPS. It just seemed like they were just overall slower in that first section of the dungeon, and maybe if they had a Shadow Priest there to PI him, they could have gone a little bit faster. Maybe we could have seen 400 or 500k DPS, because that's how ridiculous the feedback loop is if you can actually get it started. That being said, though, both teams, as they get to Echelon, are neck and neck here with similar trash counts, 0 deaths on the board, and it's just going to be essentially a single target DPS battle, because that's really all we have left is these last 3 bosses with one big AoE hit on the third boss, of course, but it's going to be a really close battle here.
Yeah, and even though Perplexed did kill that boss 3 seconds faster, Ambition pulled Echelon quicker on their side. So you can see it's incredibly close. It's going back and forth. Perplexed using Ashen here. Ellesmere also dropped on their side as well. I do believe they're only going to get 1 more Ashen after this one, so they have to use it on cooldown here because that dungeon is going to be cleared so incredibly quickly. You can see Perplexed now pulled ahead a little bit again, just a couple of percent. It is 45, so those percent basically mean nothing at this point. They're just so close to one another. You can see the percentages 80% versus 79% trash, so that means both of the teams are going to have enough trash from here on out. Of course with the mini boss as well, and all of the trash that they're going to be pulling onto the next boss. That's going to be the next difficult pull to execute, where they pull basically everything in the next room on top of the next boss, and that is really dangerous when you have Grievous and Spiteful in that small room where you don't have that much space to kite. And on top of that, some of those offensive cooldowns are just not going to be available because they're doing so many big pulls back to back to back that some cooldowns are just not up. Like the Ashen, for example, is not up, and maybe the Infernal is not going to be up immediately as well. So they have to be really careful. Ambition, though, they're already done. So Ambition caught up a couple of seconds again and are now ahead of Perplexed.
Yeah, the question here is going to be whether or not the prio damage from the Subtlety Rogue on this third boss is going to be enough to outclass the Power Infusion plus triple cleave DPS that Perplexed comp brings out. They are pulling the boss about 10 seconds earlier than Perplexed, so that's something we have to keep an eye on. But you have to remember, Perplexed has definitely a lot higher theoretical damage output because they do have the Vengeance Demon Hunter bringing them that magic debuff as well, plus they do a little bit more damage on their own outside of Incarnation. But Nerf has the Incarnation available here, so he should be pumping damage, and you can see him at the top of the meters there while their Warlock is still ramping up their Infernals.
Yeah, and I really like the gateway usage here by Ambition. They had the gateway set up immediately by Onesie, and then everyone just clicked it to gain a second, if even, from that movement. But I still just like the usage of all of the utility they have available to them. And it looks like Ambition definitely have quite a lot of boss damage. You can see they're cleaving most of the trash here. JPC dropping incredibly low as some of these casters are still alive. You can see the obliterates just being casted and the siphon lives going off from these collectors in the back, with all of these spiteful shades just going around. JPC having a really hard time doing anything at this point with all of those shades going around. You can see Asuna helping out with all of the Frost Novas and TCC trying to help with the shades, but it's definitely much more difficult for JPC to get damage off compared to all of these ranged that Perplexed is running with. But still, Ambition just ahead in percentage here. I'm not... Okay, there's the extra Stoneborg coming in now for Ambition. This is the one they did not mind control already, because they're going to be keeping that for the mini-boss afterwards. We'll see... Actually, they have both Stoneborn still available.
Oh, okay.
That's very interesting.
So
and
does
it looks like
Perplexed, though.
Perplex
So does
has two. Wow, okay, so switching strategy here. It looks like they don't want to have those Stoneborns for the boss pool. They're saving it for either the mini-boss or maybe even for the boss, the last boss itself.
It looks like Perplexed have closed the gap a little bit here. They were about 10% boss DPS behind whenever their trash went down, and you can see they've closed that gap to underneath 5% here as the boss goes down for Ambition. So there is not a lot of room in between these two teams, and it's going to come down to which of these two teams can just blast their single target DPS more when we get into this room on Inquisitor Cigar, and then we go to the final boss as well. This is going to be an all-out single target DPS battle, and as we look at cooldowns across the board, the Ashen Hollow will be up for both teams within the next 5 seconds or so. The Infernals were used on Inquisitor Cigar here, but they will come back up whenever they opt to use their Bloodlust later on, so that's not too big of an issue. It looks like everyone's just going to have all of the cooldowns available at the start of the boss here, and it's just going to be a ridiculous close single target DPS race. Inquisitor Cigar, however, going down much, much faster for Ambition.
Yeah, the one difference I can see is that the Bloodlust is going to be up earlier for Perplexed, but that's not really going to matter because you want to line it up with your cooldowns anyway, and you're only going to get one more usage of all of the cooldowns out. So that really does not matter, as Ambition is already fighting Lord Chamberlain, and you can see they're waiting for their Bloodlust to come back up. As it looks like Asuna was already popping cooldowns before the Bloodlust is running. I wonder why. I wonder if that was a mistake, as Perplexed is now engaging Lord Chamberlain as well. You can see their Bloodlust is already ready, but they are waiting for Wolf Disco's cooldowns, so they're delaying their Bloodlust a little bit as well. And you can see the boss is just going to be dropping in a second, as Incarnation has been popped by Nerf, and the Bloodlust is just waiting to be used on Ambition's side. Perplexed still holding on to their last as well, though.
I believe they're waiting for their Infernals to come back off cooldown. That's the big thing that they want to have.
That's so long, though.
Is it though? It should completely line up perfectly though. Okay, they're waiting. They're waiting now. They just go now. Perplex just goes now. They have to go now because even it's so rough because you really want to line up all your cooldowns, but they're doing it just because they feel like they have to. That's rough. They don't have the Infernal up, and Ambition has still not popped their Bloodlust, and they're still ahead on the boss. I mean, it looks like Ambition is still in the driver's seat. The second they pop their Bloodlust, they're going to catapult into the lead here.
Yeah, I wonder if this might be a safety thing, because we can't forget the fact that they actually left up 3 Tormentors. So they have the 3 debuffs here, the slow, the physical damage increase, and the 50% healing reduction. Both of the teams have these 3 debuffs. So that is a lot of damage to out-heal with that debuff. Maybe that's why they were holding that Bloodlust
this is going to be so close.
Pair it up with the Ashen. And you can see just how absolutely close this is, as Ambition now caught up, because their Bloodlust is still running, and
This is just gonna
both
be
of the
close at
teams
the
have
end.
0 deaths. And you can see Ambition just ahead a little bit, but it's so close. This
The
might go
PI
down
is
to
up
the
for Perplexed.
second.
Who's going to take this first? Can we even call it? It's going to be Ambition. It looks like it's Ambition by less than a
Oh
second.
my
We're going to have to go to the admins for that. That's... it looks like the admins have called it for Ambition, because we can see Ellesmere exploding in excitement there, but we're going to have to see the timers. That looked incredibly close, but did Ambition just 2-0 Perplexed to start off our tournament?
Well,
I think
all our
so,
pick'ems
yes.
are destroyed.
All of them.
All our pick'ems are destroyed now. Ambition with the upset to start off our day,
Wow.
taking the 2-0